Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Arthur Garcia, and I'm here with you with the latest edition of Cuéntame by Contabi. And I'm really excited about today's guest and the opportunity to share her story with you and hopefully give you some tips here for the upcoming end of the year and upcoming tax season as well. But first, I do want to start off, as always, with our purpose at Contabi, which is to lead, connect, and accelerate the adoption of cloud accounting across the Americas by creating an engaged, globally recognized Latino community. So my co-founders and I started Contabi about a year and a half ago, and we've been expanding across the U.S. into the Americas. And currently, we're at about 60 members in 11 different countries now. And we are just passionate about accounting, passionate about helping small businesses. And so that's why we do these shows. And today's show will be highlighting one of our members, Veronica Sas. So let me just give you a brief introduction into who Veronica is as I bring her on. So Veronica Sas was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and moved to Westlake Village, California when she was a young adult. She was well traveled at a young age, and Veronica appreciated being raised in a bilingual family and journeying through South, Central, and North America, all before moving to the U.S. As a young woman, her adventures continued, traveling throughout Europe when living in Germany as a military dependent. It is in Europe where her accounting career began, and she started working for the Military Post Exchange. So I hope you're excited as I am to get to know Veronica Sas. So welcome.
Good
How are you
morning.
doing? How are you
I'm
doing
doing
today?
well, thank you. Thanks
Great.
for having me.
Yeah, so that was a nice build up into your story that we're going to get into. So, lots of questions that I already have, but I love the fact that you mentioned that growing up in a bilingual family helped shape your career. And I know you have a passion for helping all sorts of businesses, but las empresas que hablan español pues son muy importantes, ¿no?
Sí, son muy importantes. Mucha gente, no sé por qué en los Estados Unidos no quieren admitir que hablan español. Y a mí siempre fue un placer decir que yo sé más de un idioma. Así que es muy importante aprender y enseñar a nuestra familia más de un idioma para poder ir por todo el mundo y poder hablar con gente.
Awesome. I love that. So I always like to say that being an accountant and knowing the language of accounting and knowing Spanish is almost like a triple threat, right? Because
Right.
accounting is the international language of business. So if you can speak English and Spanish or any other languages, then you're just that more valuable.
Yeah, sometimes the accounting lingo, it's a language all of its own. So we try to explain things to business owners in plain English because some of the accounting terminology is just way too complicated.
Sure. So why don't we start off, Veronica, with a little bit about you, your background, and how you started in accounting.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I was in Europe when I started the accounting. I actually graduated high school when I was 16. So by the time I was 20, I had an accounting degree. And then I went on later in life to get a business administration degree. But in Europe, I started working with the military exchange. And I worked at their bank, their cashier's cage. And so it was involved daily reconciling, and all of that. And then I moved on to Texas, where I worked with Texas Instruments and Acer Computers, still as a military dependent. So we moved around a lot. But with them, I was their main accountant for the customer service division and warranty department. And once we got transferred again to California, I went to work for a music company, and I was their director, of international, of North American sales and finance. So it's the director and controller over the whole North American region. I moved then to Arizona, where I worked for a company that was into real estate mortgage lending. And unfortunately, that company went into bankruptcy when the owner passed away. And I've been managing that bankruptcy ever since. And from that, I decided to kind of open up my own firm to use my experience and background to help other business owners build and develop their business.
That's great. So, question for you: do you believe that moving around to different states has helped you? From I know that you offer tax and accounting services, but being in those different states, working in different companies, has that helped you knowing what local jurisdictions or different state tax
Yeah,
compliance?
I think it gives you a broader sense of, the federal tax system, it is what it is, but each state has different rules and regulations. And especially with employees and HR, and a lot of my background has been in that area as well. So it's not only, it not only helps for the state taxes, but the payroll taxes and everything else that goes along with running a business in different states. And some of my clients now do have locations in different states and some different countries. So it's been very helpful to kind of have a broader perspective.
That's great. So, given the current situation that we're all living in, sheltering in place, I mean, currently I am in the state of New Mexico. So I've become a virtual nomad, as some like to say. What are some ways that Succentrix Phoenix has adopted or done in order to keep serving clients during these times?
Yeah, so we've always done cloud accounting. So the great thing is that we've kind of been set up for this, unfortunately, I guess, or fortunately. But we have portals, we have ways to communicate with our clients through Zoom meetings or anything else. So we can exchange documents and anything that is needed electronically online. But we've also kept the office open since we are considered an essential service. And the people that choose to and want to come to visit us at the office, they're welcome. We do have signs, stay back, do this. So we're careful, but we also want to be able to help the people that need that or want that one-on-one interaction.
That's great. Yeah. So one of the things that you mentioned there was, I think it was fortunately you were set up for this, and in that you were already using tools where you didn't have to go to your office to plug into the computer,
Right.
and you didn't have to meet your clients there to print off reports, right? So basically, taking a look at your website, I know that you're using Xero, you're using QuickBooks Online, you're using Gusto, so you've got kind of like the essential tools there in order to serve clients virtually anywhere across the U.S.
Yeah, and so we have a lot of online services. And then what I've done for our office internally, we have a server where we can all remote in. So if we choose or need to, we can still all work from home. And it's just like sitting at our office. And, with kids being back at home instead of school, we've had to all do that a little more. So we're fully prepared to work, whether it's in person at the office or at home, where we can do anything electronically and remotely.
Great. So a lot of folks in the industry say that there's riches in the niches. So are there any specific niche industries that you enjoy working with more than others, or what would you say in terms of your firm that is a perfect type of client that would be great to serve?
So I know a lot of people believe that, but my background has been so varied. I've worked for computer companies and then software and music companies. So to me, accounting is accounting no matter what the industry. So obviously, if someone builds products, you're going to have a cost of goods components where service industry won't, or not as much. But basically, it's all accounting. So there's not anyone I would say I specialize in or do not want to work with, as long as they're willing to receive the information and help and kind of, want the help, then I'm willing to work with them.
Awesome. Great. So as I mentioned to you, Veronica, we're going to have some fun this morning. So I prepared a little pop quiz for you, but
Okay.
I won't put
I'm ready.
I won't put you too much in a hot seat. So this is true or false.
Okay.
True or false? Being aware of your cash flow will only tell you how much money is coming in.
False.
Okay.
So the cash flow is a component of your overall, activity. So you need to know the ins and outs to know your financial health and what's going to happen not only in a week or 6 months, if you have a cash flow forecast that you can kind of plan ahead long term.
That's great. And I think we all have seen the stats in terms of businesses that get started and why they fail. And we know that cash flow is one of the main issues, that there's just so much pain and challenges with the business. So understanding cash flow is not just looking at your bank account every morning to believe that you're in a good place. There's actually more to it. So
yeah, so it's really vital to understand that. Great, you might have an invoice out there that's going to pay you $1 million, but if you never get that $1 million, or it takes you 9 months to receive it, what do you do in the meantime, and what are your expenses? So it's really important to see, not only understand it, but understand the overall picture of how everything flows.
Great. All right. So next question, true or false? A detailed financial report can help you avoid costly headaches during tax time.
True. Yes. So not only can it avoid that because you know where things are categorized, but it can help you in other areas as well. If you go to your bank and you have a very well detailed financial report that's reconciled, it will help you get loans and lines of credits and things that a business needs, especially as they're starting up and growing.
Yeah, that's great. I think financial reports are critical. And having spent some time in the accounting industry and working for a software vendor, I was always amazed at how often small businesses did not have the most basic financial reports. And I'm not talking about audited reports. I'm not talking about I'm talking about an income statement or profit and loss and a balance sheet. And we know that the income statement will help. Is where the report where you see all of your income and expenses, and the balance sheet is something you should be looking at regularly because it tells you how much money you have.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me. To me, the balance sheet is like the financial health of the company. And so it amazes me when people give me a balance sheet which shows $1 million in debt but no accounts receivable, and yet I know they're like, a contractor or someone that should have invoices, and they just don't understand what any of that means. So it's really, really important to have properly prepared financial statements that you can understand so that you can make better business decisions.
That's great. So that's a little tip for small businesses out there as we approach the end of the year. If you do not have profit and loss or income statement, they're synonymous. It's the same. Or a balance sheet that you're looking at regularly, it's something you should be asking your accountant for, or finding an accountant who can provide those reports to you, and it'll make a world of a difference.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, it will. And it will help you understand it, but do better tax planning and just better planning in general. And you're better prepared when things like COVID happen. If you had properly planned and financial statements, you might be able to withstand. But if you don't know where things stand, when you're in dire need of a loan or anything like that, it's going to take you that much longer to get the help that you need.
Right. Okay, great. All right, last question for you in the hot seat is, true or false? It is okay to neglect your finances if your business is healthy.
False.
That's right.
Super false. Yeah, because you don't know how healthy your business is if you neglect your finances, right? You just, you have money coming in, and you're paying money, and you put some money in your pocket, but you don't know the overall health, right? If you have money coming in, but you really piling up the debt, you don't have the financials to prove it. Yeah, so you should always keep on top of anything financial for your business.
That's right. Excellent. So no more true or false. Sorry, I know you might be disappointed.
Oh, man.
But but I do want to get to a topic that is pretty important this time of year, and it's how to pay yourself as a business owner. So we know that there's different types of entities. There's a sole proprietorship, which most businesses start out as, and then there's corporate entities like S corps and LLCs and C corps. But one of the most common questions that a lot of businesses have is how much they should pay themselves. So let's start with the sole prop. How should a sole proprietor pay themselves?
Yeah, so normally it's a sole proprietor doesn't pay himself or herself through payroll. So they should take owner's draws necessary to fund their lifestyle, but also keep in mind what is needed to further the business. Because most people that are sole proprietors are starting out, and if they take every penny of profit into their personal account, then they don't have the cash necessary to kind of fund and grow that business. So again, that's where even a sole proprietor having financials would really help, kind of figure out what that good point is.
That's right. So you mentioned that if they took every penny of profit, so that would be a sole proprietor should take from their profits, right? But
Correct.
taking a step back, how would they know they were profitable if they didn't have financials, if they didn't have an accountant by their side helping them along the way, right?
They wouldn't. So they would just take every penny they get minus bills and say that's my profit, and kind of take that money. But we all know there's more to a profit and loss than just money in, money out, because you have depreciation, you have other factors that people just don't take into account. So it's important to kind of, again, get those financials and see what your business looks like.
That's right. So I imagine that as you start working with sole props and maybe they're coming to this decision, a lot of times, do you find that they're using personal bank account for their business and personal? Is that frequent?
Yeah, that's very common. And so one of the first thing I always tell people that come to me, separate your business from your personal account, because they are separate entities. Even though you are the owner of both, personally and business, just keep track of it. And it's much simpler if you're audited to just pull one bank statement that's your business, then now give them insight into your whole personal life as well, because that's what you would need to provide.
Sure. And why do you think that is common? Do you think that it's because businesses maybe they have a side hustle or a side project and they're not ready to go all in, so maybe they don't want to go to a bank and get a formal bank account even though they're a sole proprietor? Or you think it's just habit of just
I think a lot of people start out as something like, hey, I can do this on the side, and then it grows into something that's really profitable. And most banks won't open a separate account unless you have the tax ID. And it's just not, the knowledge is not there of what is necessary to get an LLC, to get a tax ID, and then to get that separate bank account. And if you're really busy and doing well on your side business and you have a full-time job, you sometimes say, oh, I'll figure it out later. And then again, that's why it's important to start out with someone that can help you along all those steps.
right. Yeah, I think there's a sometimes a misconception on what value an accountant can have for a business, especially with small businesses. It might just be starting out, as I mentioned, a side hustle. I want to see if this can turn into something, and I don't need to do accounting or I don't need to do bookkeeping. I'm not big enough.
Yeah.
But
And
oftentimes,
yeah, and what I find is a lot of people starting out, they don't value, an accounting service. But then when things go bad a year and a half later, or they start getting notices, or then it's like they pay a lot more in the service because now you have a year and a half to catch up on. And there is a lot of value in starting things right and kind of doing things the right way to begin with.
right. Okay, so as we wrap up this segment here on the how about an S corp or a corporation? So we covered sole proprietor on taking an owner's draw. So what's best practice for a corporation, for an owner operated corporation?
Yeah, so the owner operating a C Corp would need to pay himself through payroll. And so that's something most C Corps, if they have a board or not, something that can be decided. But obviously, always it's a reasonable salary that the IRS requires. And what's considered a reasonable salary might vary by opinion. But normally, if you were to hire someone to do your job, how much would you pay them? And so that's kind of what I consider a reasonable salary.
That's right. So that's often a tricky question, right? Well, it can be. It's pretty straightforward, a reasonable wage, but oftentimes we both know that the owners or the founders are oftentimes the last ones to get paid, and at the
Right.
end of the year, when they must pay themselves, right? They need to put themselves on payroll, and they're conflicted. How much should I take for my business? How much should I leave in there because I have big ideas for next year? And obviously that impacts the tax liability as well. So what is your advice for an owner only S corporation, and how much they should pay themselves?
Yeah, so the S corp, they have an actual payroll requirement where they have to pay themselves, so they don't really have that option. The IRS mandates it. So again, it's what is considered reasonable. So if I were to hire an accountant to come do my work, that would be a reasonable salary. And I always say, like, use common sense. If you're making $2 million, but your salary is $20,000, that's definitely not reasonable. So just look at what the business is earning and what someone doing your job would pay themselves. And by the end of the year, make sure you've paid yourself a reasonable salary.
Excellent. Well, I think that's some solid advice there for some of our small business listeners out there. So I do want to encourage folks that are interested in connecting with Veronica that they can visit her at succentrixphoenix.com, and you can take a look at her website, the services that she offers in terms of getting in contact with her. But one of the things that I've also noticed about you, Veronica, is you're pretty active in social media. You've got good presence there. And I was looking at your Twitter today, which is at Succentrix_Sas. You were talking about letters from the IRS. So is this a time period where individuals start getting letters from the IRS?
Well, it just seems with the shutdown and everything that happened, people don't realize the IRS actually shut down also. And so for about 2 months, no one was working, but the computer still kind of send out letters automatically. So a lot of people are getting letters in the mail, and the IRS is backed up processing things for about 2 months. So the letters still generate, but they might have made a payment or filed a tax return. So they're just getting crossed. A lot of people are getting letters, and the IRS is just backed up. And so it takes a while to kind of correct those two.
Right. And letters are common, but how about phone calls from the IRS? Does that happen?
No, the IRS never initiates a phone call. So if someone claims to be for the IRS, then, unless you've had a conversation with a revenue officer, they never initiate a call to follow up on any tax matter.
That is so key, especially as we close out the year and get into the new one. I mean, there's so many questions about tax liability. There was a stimulus check that came. There should be one coming. So I think as we head into this season, it's so important to find a trusted advisor, not just an accountant that's going to tell you how much you have to pay and by when, but someone that's going to look at your situation. And we spoke about the phone calls, but we know that oftentimes at this period of time is when fraud happens.
Right.
And people call claiming to be the IRS.
Yeah, and another thing, a lot of businesses did take out a lot of the PPP loans and disaster loans, and it's really important to figure out when they want to ask for forgiveness from the PPP, because forgiveness means you don't get to claim the expenses. So they really need to analyze when it would be best. This year or next year, given all the uncertainty, we want to make sure that they're taking full advantage of that forgiveness and, limiting their tax liability.
That's right. What else, Veronica? What are some other tips for year end for small businesses that they should be considering, as we're already maybe a month and a half until the end of 2020, right? It's like people are like, let's get to 21. Like, if I could just get there, everything will
We're almost there. So I think my big thing is, people that know me know I'm a big planner. So my biggest tip is, don't wait till December 31st to plan your tax strategy. Kind of work with someone or plan throughout the years. A lot of my clients know that if something changes in their situation, they can send me paperwork and I'll do up a new estimate and work with them. So to me, planning is key, and planning should be a year-round event, not a last-second event. So if you have time now between November and December, start figuring out what you can do to minimize those taxes, because we're all going to pay them, but let's pay as little as legally possible.
Right. I think that's such an important point. Is if you fail to plan, then you're almost planning to fail, right? And
Right.
and being able to look at a full calendar year or even a 3-year plan in terms of the expenses that you're going to have, whether it might be equipment, if you're doing research and development, and expansion. I mean, there's so many things to consider. Enterprise zones, if you're going to expand, where should you expand? You shouldn't just open up a new retail location in an area because they put a for rent sign up, or because
Right.
a buddy said, hey, this awesome place just came up. Like, there's so many things that are go into a decision like that. And again, it all has tax. It can all have tax
Right.
implications.
Well, and that's where I try to encourage people, some of my larger clients, let's forecast a few years out to see what could happen, because that affects your cash flow, it affects your employees, and so let's do a long-term forecast, so you have a plan in place, and then you can track against what you've planned and see where you've gone wrong, or what, we don't know what's going to happen in a few months, but at least if you have some sort of plan, you can make better decisions.
Okay, excellent, awesome. Well, as I opened up, I shared with the folks that naciste in Argentina. So any plans to expand or make more connections in Argentina, or?
Argentina siempre va a ser mi país, y viajo cuando puedo. Ahora está todo cerrado. Me gustaría mudarme a otro país, no sé a dónde, en Europa o Argentina de nuevo, pero por ahora estoy acá. En unos años vamos a decidir si me vuelvo a mi país.
Excellent. Yeah, I remember it's a decision for you and your family in moving back, and
Yeah.
and
My son is not keen on it, so I
no,
have to convince him.
ah,
He was born here, so he doesn't have that love that I do.
sure. Well, it might be something that he grows to appreciate later, and,
Yeah.
and want to go connect there. And also, being that you're part of the international community with Contabi, Gonzalo Alvarez de Toledo is kind of someone that has been instrumental to our growth of Contabi, and so we're looking to continue to expand. But yeah, Argentina is definitely a place that I would like to visit. And now that I've got connections there, well, I'll say connections. Gonzalo can correct me. I know somebody that's there. It'll make the trip more enjoyable.
Yeah, you should. It's a beautiful country. You should go.
Yeah. Great. Well, Veronica, I've definitely appreciated the time that we got to share a little about your story, talk about the services that you have to offer. And I do want to remind everybody that if you are interested in connecting with Veronica, that you can visit her at succentrixphoenix.com, or you can follow her on Twitter as well at Succentrix_Sas, and you can connect with her. She always puts out great content, things to consider, tips for tax and accounting. So I definitely encourage you to follow her on Twitter as well. So with that, Veronica, thanks for joining us. Any last words? Thank
you very much for having me. My advice: always plan, and I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Veronica. If you can just hang on there for a moment. Great. So what a great interview with Veronica, who's been in the industry for over 20 years. And you can tell that when I put her in the hot seat, she knew true or false. And those might have been softball questions, but I encourage you, if you're looking for somebody in the Phoenix area, and again, because she is operating a cloud firm, she can serve clients across the country. So I do want to also mention that if you're an accountant and you've listened to this show and you're interested in learning more about the Contabi Alliance, some of our mission, our values, I encourage you to visit ContabiAlliance.com, where you can find more information about our alliance and our values and our purpose. And then also you can visit our website and find some of our members. And I mentioned Veronica Sas is an excellent partner for you to consider. As you can tell from the interview, there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of value that she has to offer you, and not just a transactional tax return. We did get a note from Joel. Gracias por compartir, Veronica. So there's a little kudos there for you from one of our listeners. So thanks again for joining us for this episode of Cuéntame by Contabi featuring Veronica Sas. And we look forward to continuing this series and continue to introduce you to our awesome members and experts in the field. Thank you.